5 Live Formula One.
The checkered flag has fallen on qualifying for the Canadian Grand Prix, and it's George Russell who will start the 10th race of the season from pole position. Alongside him will be Max Verstappen. Alongside me is McLaren's Formula E driver Sam Bird. We've just watched a pretty frenetic qualifying session. It was tight. We actually couldn't call it coming into the session, and in the end, Russell, who has looked strong, managed to secure pole by over a tenth of a second, and he was pretty elated with it.
And rightfully so, Harry. It was what I thought a really good qualifying session, that one. We couldn't call it, could we? I asked you before the session, who do you fancy for pole? And actually, credit where credit's due, you got it right today. I called it as Lando Norris, and we'll speak about that in a bit. But George Russell, what a lap that was. I mean, he was elated with it, but on the medium compound tyre, which has been delivering superbly for multiple drivers today, put it on pole position.
That's the interesting thing. Actually, there is a whole tyre discussion to be had, which I know everybody loves, but Pirelli have been experimenting with a few things in Imola and Monaco where they brought the softest compound in the range. They've done that again this weekend. It's actually a step softer than what we ran in Canada last time out. So it's that C6 soft tyre that proved tricky to understand in Imola and Monaco. And the interesting thing that it's sort of unfolded is that there is not much performance gap between the soft and the medium. So with the two front runners, P1 and P2, setting it on the medium tyre just kind of showcases, well, what strategy might that lead to in the Grand Prix on Sunday. We know Fernando Alonso too was running that medium tyre and performing quite well in it. And I think Pirelli bringing that softer range has really sort of helped spice things up a bit.
Absolutely. I have a theory on the soft compound tyre versus the medium. So I've experienced this once before in my career, where I've put on a soft compound tyre at Le Mans, of all places, another race that's going on today. And I didn't like the balance of the car. Basically, I was trying to, the sidewall of the tyre was softer due to the compound. And the tyre felt like it was falling over itself all the time, which is kind of what it looked like was happening to Lando Norris in the latter parts of Q3. Put on the medium compound tyre, and I went a lot quicker because the car just felt a little bit more stable underneath me. And you know, these little things can have a huge effect. We saw Fernando Alonso more comfortable on the medium. George Russell, obviously, more comfortable on the medium. And then some people just making more mistakes on the soft. I wonder whether they're trying to ask so much of the sidewall that it just feels like it's falling over and they don't have that support from that tyre.
Well, it certainly seemed to support George Russell on his way to his first pole position of the season. Much needed after a tough triple header for the Mercedes marque. Let's hear from the pole man, speaking with Lawrence Barretto.
Hey George, congratulations. I'm not sure I've seen you punch the air that hard after a lap. Just tell me how you're feeling right now.
Yeah, it was crazy, to be honest, because I've never finished a lap and had sort of goosebumps afterwards in my whole career. And this circuit's a real challenge to drive. It's bumpy. You've got to be so committed, and the car and myself, it just felt on rails, and it just kept giving me more lap time. And I'm watching my steering wheel. I'm like, all right, I'm 1/10 up now. I'm 2/10 up. I'm 3/10 up. 4/10, 5/10. I'm like 6. Like, how is this even possible? It was one of those laps. It was like, to be honest, even right now, I don't know how it was possible that I found 6 temps from the beginning of Q3, and that's why it was, really, really quite something.
Does that allow you to dream then about tomorrow? Because it feels like it's been a bit of a miracle today. What can you deliver tomorrow?
We're definitely in the fight, no doubt about it, but we know the strength and weakness of our car. We perform when it's cooler and struggle when it's hotter. The race is at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Quali, by the time we did Q3, it was after 5 o'clock. So, little things like that make a big difference. If a cloud comes out, that's good news for us. If the sun's there, it's not good. So, there's so many of these variables that we're playing with. But this is validation of let's say, the inherent problem in our car. We'll take the positives today, but that aided us to pole position. But we're not naive to the fact that for the majority of the circuits, what makes it so good here today or in Vegas is what makes us struggle at the other tracks.
George Russell then will have the best view in the house. Pole is on the left-hand side. It's a 152-metre run down to the Turn 1 braking zone. However, he will have Max Verstappen in his mirrors, who lines up alongside him. And we know those two are the best of friends.
He'll have Max Verstappen in his mirrors for 149 metres. And then they will, be... I can see this start being... I cannot wait for the start of tomorrow's race, just because of these two will not give each other an inch due to multiple disputes that they've had over the last 2, 3, maybe even 4 seasons. They came together quite famously in a sprint race in Baku, and that started it. I think that was 2 or 3 years ago. Then we had what happened in Spain last weekend, the spat at the end of last year. I don't think there's any love lost between these two. And they line up first and second. And what makes it even more spicy, Harry, is the fact that Max Verstappen's on 11, that's right, 11 penalty points. One more, a little bit like your national driving licence, you lose your licence for a race in Formula One terms, and Red Bull would have to find another driver. Max Verstappen cannot afford to do anything silly, yet he's come out openly and said, I'm not changing the way I drive. So this start is going to be spicy.
And what's even better with the penalty point situation is that George Russell keeps bringing it up too. He knows, and he's playing the game. In his post-qualifying interview, straight away,
I've got
said,
points to play with.
Exactly.
Brilliant line. I love that line. That's great.
It's absolute grade A drama, and we are here from it. We are here for it. Let's hear from second place man, Max Verstappen.
Hey Max, another heck of a lap out there. I know it wasn't pole position today, but are you pleased with the way that you kind of recovered from maybe a difficult start to the weekend?
I think all weekend except FP2 was very good. The balance of the car was actually not too bad. I think we just missed a little bit of that overall grip, to really fight for pole eventually. But I'm happy with second, to be honest, because I don't think there was much more possible than that, even heading into qualifying. So I'm happy.
From what you've learned about your car, from what you've seen from the rivals, can you fight for the win tomorrow?
I think that will be tough, but we'll do the best we can. I mean, yes, my long ones weren't too bad, but still to keep the tires alive is not easy around here. And of course we know that on our car anyway, it's not the easiest task. So we'll have to be very precise, and hopefully we'll just optimize everything.
Max Verstappen then, who lines up on the front row alongside George Russell, speaking with Lawrence Barretto. OK, that's the rundown to Turn 1. Of course, we've got 70 laps, though, to get to grips with, expecting a 2-stop race. Last time out, Max Verstappen got the better of George Russell in Canada 1 year ago. But it certainly seems that Mercedes has come here with renewed vigour, while across the weekend we have heard complaints continuing from Verstappen about the heavy steering ever since FP1, and that seemed to rear its head a bit in qualifying too. So all is not quiet ease on board that Red Bull.
No, but I think you can say, the same for every single driver up and down the paddock. It looks so tricky out there, doesn't it? It really does look like it's only George Russell that's pretty much happy with the balance of his car. Everybody else, I mean, you see the balance of the car through turn 13, 14. I mean, you look at the shapes that Ollie Behrman was throwing. Lando Norris complaining, at the rear of his car complaining constantly. Oscar Piastri hitting the wall of champions. It's all going on. It's not just Max Verstappen complaining. Everybody is finding it very, very tricky around this circuit.
Yeah, it's been a track that, well, it was resurfaced last year, but it's a smooth track surface, but it just doesn't get used for most of the year, which doesn't help with any of that grip and leads to a lot of track evolution, as we see.
I gave what I thought was a wonderful in-depth analysis of circuit tarmac. And
you did?
Yeah, I can't remember what I said now.
No, but it was really good.
It sounded really good during qualifying, so I hope you all enjoyed that.
Well, you can go back and find it on BBC Sounds if you really want to hear Sam's wise tarmac chat. Meanwhile, behind the front row is our championship leader, Oscar Piastri, who actually, third, I think, is pretty good for Piastri. I know he was in the fight for pole and he would have wanted it, but at one point this weekend, and actually throughout the weekend, he hasn't looked as on the pace as Lando Norris.
No, he had a difficult FP3 where he clipped the Wall of Champions, didn't he? He broke a rim, got a puncture, had to limp back to the pits, and I think he ended the session the best part of 7/10 off his teammate, and Lando Norris was setting the pace. So for him to have qualified third was definitely damage limitation, and actually he's come out of qualifying looking pretty rosy in comparison to where Lando's finished.
Do you think he can play a part in the battle for the win?
I absolutely think that Oscar is, well, of course he can play a part in the race. Starting third, get a good start, and you're right there in the mix. We know that the McLaren is normally decent on its tyre life. It's been the standout car of the season so far. Okay, it's not necessarily the quickest around this circuit, but it'll be there. It'll be in the mix. There's 70 laps to decide who's the winner. And I do see not only Oscar Piastri's McLaren, but I do still think Lando Norris will have a part to play in the race.
Well, we'll come on to Norris momentarily, but first let's hear from the championship leader, Oscar Piastri, who starts the Canadian Grand Prix from third. He's speaking with Lawrence Barretto.
Oscar, considering how difficult this morning was, is that kind of a reasonable result from qualifying today?
Yeah, I'm honestly pretty happy with that, which I haven't said about qualifying third this year so far, but yeah, it's a decent result, honestly. It's been a tough weekend so far. Like you said, this morning was tricky again, and I felt much more confident in qualifying, which was good. You know, there's the question mark of whether we should have run a medium or not, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with how things have gone in the end. So yeah, that's all.
Have you got any kind of inklings as to why maybe it's been so tricky so far, and does that pacing quality, at least when you pulled it back a bit, give you hope for tomorrow?
I mean, there's definitely been some question marks. I don't think we fully understand, you know, why. The problems with the car have been pretty clear, but it's not been the easiest to find a solution to them. I think in qualifying things felt a bit better. Still not perfect, but considerably better. And ultimately, I think we were back into the position we should be. It's just that, you know, Mercedes looked very quick this weekend. Max has looked quick. We've potentially looked a little bit slower, and then you add in the medium tyre, and it raises questions, and you know, it's very hard to know. So I think we were back into our normal or relatively normal position. Just the competition's been very strong this weekend.
Piastri from third then, who was the best of the McLarens, and it just all seemed to fall away for Lando Norris in that final qualifying, a mistake on his first run coming through the Wall of Champions chicane. And I just wonder if that kind of knocked his confidence a bit as well for the rest of the session, because in the end, all he could muster was 7th place. He'll have work to do.
Yeah, again, a scrappy Q3. I think Lando's one of, if not the quickest guys out there in one lap pace in Formula One. And he's got an extremely quick car, but it's an edgy car. And there's something, when it gets to Q3 this year, I think this is like the third time where I've watched and thought, something's not clicked in Q3, because the rest of the time it clicks. And he's quick, and he's fastest in free practices, and he's fastest in Q1s and Q2s. And it gets to Q3, and it's almost like he wants to get on pole by a couple of tenths when he doesn't need to. Whereas I feel like Oscar Piastri might have a different mindset and just deliver a really solid lap, not a world-beating lap. And that difference might only be a tenth. But you've even heard his engineer trying to get Lando to just rein it in a little bit. You don't have to be the last of the late breakers, Lando. What was the language that Will Joseph said? It's not time on the brakes, it's the lines. So that says to me Lando's just trying to brake too late and is out braking himself. And when you try and brake too late, you're putting an awful lot of energy into the tyre. and then you try and turn in, the car's effectively got more rake in it as well, and the rear is just complaining and will overstep, and then you get oversteer, and that's what we saw.
Is it not quite telling as well that Norris is getting almost that kind of driver coaching at that stage in Q3, having to have that reminder? Is that not
that's
a bit
fine?
Is that okay?
Fine. But yeah, look, the best drivers in the world sometimes need coaching. It's you're never too good to learn, because the data never lies. There might be something that you can improve. All drivers will look at data, and there'll always be something that you think, I can just improve that. I can do better there. So you can't look at data during the session, but you can get some feedback from the GPS tracking to say, right, the time you're losing is here, or let's bring that back and focus on just maximizing your lines instead of trying to maximize the braking, for example, which is what Lando was being told to do.
So the thing I find curious, though, is we came into this weekend, you look at the characteristics of the track, low-speed corners, long straights, and you think straight away McLaren are in for a shoe-in right now, and they're so good at keeping their temperatures down and the tyres too. So I can't understand why they haven't actually trounced the field.
Because I don't think they're necessarily brilliant in a straight line. They might be really good in low speed, but there's quite a lot of medium speed here, and there's also a lot of, dragless areas where you want a drag-free car, which is typically a Williams kind of car, where we've seen Williams get better results than what we'd expect. So I fancied Red Bull for a decent result here, because they do look quite good with the DRS open. And yeah, I expected Mercedes to be quite strong here, and they've absolutely delivered.
Well, a bit of work to do then for Lando Norris. Let's hear what he had to say after qualifying down in 7th.
Lando, you look so quick in FP3 and in those first parts of qualifying. Just talk me through where it kind of went wrong, and not the specific moment, but just why you maybe didn't get it together in that final part.
I just pushed a bit hard and too many mistakes, that's all.
In terms of the car and the ultimate performance of it, was it kind of where you'd expected it to be, and does that give you hope tomorrow?
Yeah, I think, good enough, for a top 3, probably not good enough for pole. Hard to know how much was maybe the medium tyre performing that a little bit better, especially when the grip comes up. Maybe the medium's a touch better, but that was a gamble. It's a risk, and I guess every team has their own opinion on what they thought was best, and clearly we didn't think that was going to be better. But we did what we did, and I just didn't put it together when I needed to.
What do you think you can recover tomorrow?
That's tough to say. I think we're maybe a little bit quicker than some of the cars ahead, but not all of them. So top 5 is probably a good start.
Lando Norris then, who will have to get his overtaking shoes on, but where do you think he can get up to?
I think the podium's not out of the question, to be honest. We've seen this car is the standout car of the season. That's the reason why they're close to 200 points clear of everybody else in the Constructors' Championship. So you wouldn't bet against him getting up to a podium. And if he can do that, it would be damage limitation in the Drivers' World Championship. McLaren will be hoping that he can score well as well.
Well, let's see what he can do from P7. Lando Norris has only finished on the podium twice when starting outside of the top 6. So the stats aren't quite in his favour, but let's see what he can do over 70 laps. For another driver who also had a bit of a shocker in the final part of qualifying, let's turn our attention to Ferrari and Charles Leclerc, who on his final flying lap got all crossed up coming through turn 6 and 7, and really he was up in the first sector anyway, and then it all just fell away from him. He'll actually be just behind Lando Norris as well, but there was more there for Charles Leclerc to have.
Definitely. I thought he was on for a top 5, maybe even a top 4 today. So if we talk you through it, he's had a good turn 1, turn 2, 3, 4 was nice and clean, unlike in FP1. 5 is flat out, and then comes sector 1, and he's green in sector 1, and it's close. He's in the discussion for a decent result. But then you've got a racing bull of Isaac Hadjar going relatively slowly a few seconds up the road. And we know that these cars create a lot of turbulent air multiple seconds down the road. So he's hit this turbulent air. He's gone barreling into turn 6, had a little bit of a twitch on entry, which has meant he's have to come off the brake a bit, release the brake, go back on the brake. That's carried a little bit more minimum speed into turn 6 than what he wanted, which has then meant he's run wide out of 6. He's then extremely tight going through 7, tried to hang on through 7 with a really tight and narrow line through the corner, and the rear tyres complained too much, and he's oversteering all the way through 7 and had to give up the lap, and that was his lot done.
And it was 8th. That was all that was there for him to have in the end. His teammate Hamilton up in the top 5 in 5th. So again, much like Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc will have to do some work in the Canadian Grand Prix. It was Isaac Hadjar who was the car that Leclerc was not happy with the dirty air. Now, on that occasion, to us at least, and when we called it in the commentary box, and you were particularly saying that it didn't really feel like Hadjar was impeding in particular. However, he did have an impeding incident during that qualifying.
Oh, yes, he did. So there were a couple of drivers particularly unhappy with Isaac Hadjar. I think the Charles Leclerc one, I don't think you can put too much blame on his shoulders for that, because it was unsighted. He wouldn't have known that Leclerc was there, and he kind of was out of the way, minding his own business. However, end of Q1, and it's crunch time for both Williams drivers. One of them has had an engine cover pretty much explode down the back straight in Alexander Albon, and Carlos Sainz really needs a decent lap to get going this year. And it looks like he's got the car underneath him to do that. However, he comes across Isaac Hadjar sort of dawdling in the middle part of the lap and absolutely destroys Carlos Sainz's chances of making it through to Q1. So I imagine, probably as we're recording this, Isaac Hadjar's being, stepping up the steps to the steward's room, being shown a replay and going, what do you make of this,
Pleading
sir?
his case.
Yes, what do you make of this?
At the time of recording, nothing has come through yet, but Hadjar could well be in for a spot of bother, let's say. But nonetheless, good effort from him to get I think that's a 4th consecutive top 10 qualifying. He may well have a grid penalty, though, to come with it. But either way, the speed continues to be there for Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. While we're on grid penalties, worth saying that the other grid penalty that we're expecting is Yuki Tsunoda. Well, that's been confirmed. He qualified 11th, and ahead of his 100th race, he'll have a 10-place grid penalty for a red flag infringement in free practice, where he overtook Oscar Piastri's car on track. So that unfortunately makes his rather better qualifying of late kind of null, as he'll go from right towards the back. Just want to jump up a little bit on the order, because it's Russell Verstappen in the front row, Piastri 3rd, Antonelli with another good job in the other Mercedes in 4th, Hamilton, as I said, in 5th, and then kind of just silently going about his business, but has looked fairly strong from the get-go, the wily old fox, Fernando Alonso. We thought, or Andrew Benson, the BBC's F1 correspondent, thought 7th place was doable, 6th place a stretch, but he has stretched and he got P6.
Looked really good on the medium compound tyre. George Russell, Fernando Alonso, 2 drivers to make it work. And yeah, I was hoping top 5, but that was far too much. Top 6 is a brilliant result in a car that at stages this year has looked really poor. Really, really poor. But Fernando Alonso on a couple of occasions now in qualifying has used this medium compound tyre, and it looks like the Aston Martin at times looks far more comfortable on this tyre, and this is one of those times.
Yeah, certainly is. 3rd top 6 start in the last 4 Grand Prix for Fernando Alonso. So the speed is there. An upgrade introduced a couple of races ago is helping with that. Let's see if he can make it back-to-back points finishes.
Is the upgrade his mighty moustache? Is that the upgrade that is helping find the speed?
We haven't had a proper look at it so far. Is
it's
it
up there.
We're seeing it now as we record. He has let it. He's let it go. He's sort of really kind of grown it out a bit, hasn't he,
it's
for
very
this weekend?
Ted Lasso.
Maybe that is.
Maybe that is the upgrade that has helped find the speed.
Very suave for Fernando Alonso. He'll go from 6th ahead of Norris, Leclerc, Hadjar, Albon, the top 10. A couple of points of note for the bottom half of the field. We've mentioned Sainz with work to do after being impeded. Lawson and Gasly will be on the back row, or they qualified on the back row at least, so they weren't very happy with that either. But I want to give a shout out to the Argentine Franco Colapinto. Having looked, I have to say, a bit at sea throughout this weekend. He found himself facing the wrong way round in turn 2 on multiple occasions in the practice sessions. Has out-qualified Gasly, top 12.
Absolutely. You know what? He's had a difficult time since re-entering the world of Formula One in his new colours at Alpine. He looked great, didn't he, last year? And he was a bit of a revelation at Williams. I think people expected a lot of him when he stepped into the Alpine car and expected a turn of results in that second seat in the Alpine compared to Jack Doohan. And that hasn't been the case until this qualifying session, and he's delivered a really solid performance throughout the session. He was even really disappointed with his P12. He thought he could have made it into Q3. I've got a feeling he might be starting on the 5th row after penalties are handed out. I think that doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I imagine he'll be definitely starting. He'll definitely be
start
11th,
11th, yeah.
But he might be in P10.
And then what will be crucial for him is just to have a clean race and try and bring home a point.
A clean race and score a point or two will give his confidence the world of good.
Yeah, and that will be exactly what Flavio Briatore ordered. Drive fast, don't crash, score points. Easier said than done in Formula One, but those are the ground rules that he laid down for Colapinto.
Absolutely.
So let's see how he gets on then. Right, so that's your grid pretty much run down. 70 laps around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. All that's left to ponder and predict is your race winner, Sam Bird, come the end of those 70 laps.
Ooh, 2-stop strategies. It doesn't pain me to say it because he's actually a really lovely chap. I'm going to go with Max Verstappen for the win tomorrow. I think that he's looked pretty good all weekend. I imagine the Red Bull will be very slippery in a straight line, so I'm going to go Max Verstappen for the win.
Okay, I'm going to go for George Russell. I predicted him for pole. I'm going to back him to do the double and go for the race win. But I think we're going to be treated to some good racing tomorrow.
I think it's going to be epic.
Sam Bird said it's going to be epic. It's got a lot to live up to. Hope you can join us for it. The Canadian Grand Prix will be on BBC Radio 5 Live, lights out from 7 o'clock. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.